Have you ever felt lost, but couldn't even explain why? This video is for the ones who feel something is missing, but don't know what to look for. It's for those who lie awake at night, sensing there's a deeper truth, but can't name the question. We're not here to give you surface-level answers. We're here to walk with you through the silence before the question, the confusion that actually marks the beginning of your spiritual awakening. If you felt stuck, disconnected, or haunted by a feeling that your life doesn't match your soul, you're not broken. You're being prepared. Through stories, symbols, and raw insight, this guide helps you shift from chasing answers to listening for your soul's quiet guidance. Because the real transformation begins when you stop asking, "What's the answer?" and start living with the courage to wonder, "What's the real question?" Most people walk through life convinced they need answers. They chase gurus, books, self-help programs, and online secrets with the desperate hope of fixing a problem they haven't even identified. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't find the answer if you don't know what question you're asking. This is the spiritual awakening nobody talks about. The moment you realize you're searching in the dark with a flashlight that doesn't work. And yet, ironically, this is where the soul search begins. It's not when you're sure of what you want, but when you're haunted by a sense that something essential is just out of reach. A mystical experience may feel like a spark, but often it begins as a fog. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you went there? That's exactly how the early stages of a spiritual journey feel. You're standing in the middle of your own life wondering, "Wait, what am I doing here again?" This is not confusion. This is invitation. It's a nudge from your higher self, your intuition guide, whispering, "There's more." When someone begins to live the question, they shift from chasing clarity to embodying curiosity. And that shift rewrites the script entirely. Because the real transformation begins not with finding, but with wondering. We're taught from a young age to have the answer. In school, in jobs, even in relationships, certainty is rewarded. Doubt is seen as weakness. But spiritually, doubt is sacred. It cracks the ego just enough to let light in. When Carl Jung spoke of shadow work, he was inviting us to explore the parts of ourselves we avoid, the questions we don't even dare to form. And yet, those questions are the doorway to inner wisdom. You don't start your soul purpose by being sure. You begin by being available. Available to be reshaped, redirected, and even disoriented. Take a look at your day. Do you ever pause long enough to feel that strange pull in your chest? That sense of restlessness, even when everything looks fine? That's not anxiety, it's a breadcrumb. And if you ignore it, life will shout louder. People often say they feel stuck in their jobs, disconnected in relationships, uninspired in daily life. But instead of asking why, they scroll their way into numbness. They chase solutions instead of listening to the questions rising from within. But that voice inside you? It's not asking for logic. It's asking for listening. Think of the great breakthroughs in history. They never began with clean answers. They began with obsession, confusion, and persistence. Einstein didn't know relativity when he started asking why light behaved so strangely. He lived the question. He trusted the unfolding. The same applies to your own spiritual journey. If you feel the urge to shift careers, leave a relationship, or simply sit in silence, it's not random. That's the voice beneath the voice. The deep question that hasn't yet formed words. And honoring it is the start of conscious living. Now here's a practical invitation. Try going one day without solving anything. No podcast, no productivity hack, no attempt to fix your mindset. Just observe. Notice what questions bubble up when you give your mind space. Do they come with fear? Curiosity? Grief? Those emotions are part of the answer. You might notice a pattern you've ignored for years. Or a symbol keeps showing up. That's your soul speaking in code. Don't rush to translate. Just listen longer. The longer you sit with discomfort, the more divine guidance can rise in silence. This is why so many people never truly awaken. They want shortcuts to spiritual healing without surrendering to uncertainty. But transformation doesn't come with a checklist, it comes with chaos. When you start your journey from not knowing, you open a portal. You're no longer trying to fix life. You're willing to meet it. That's where the higher self begins to whisper, and where your ego death starts to crack through the noise. And here's the part most people miss. What looks like being lost is often the very first step toward being found. In a world obsessed with instant answers, not knowing has become uncomfortable, even embarrassing. But from a spiritual lens, this space of uncertainty is holy ground. It's like the silence before a symphony begins, pregnant with possibility. The ego wants to skip the silence and go straight to the solution. But the soul? It settles into the quiet. That space between what you understand and what you sense is sacred. It's where shadow work begins, where higher self-awakening takes root. Not knowing isn't a flaw. It's a door. And if you dare to stand there long enough, something ancient starts moving inside you. Let's be honest, most people fear this space. They fill it with distraction, scrolling, snacking, scheduling. Anything to avoid the discomfort of stillness. But those who choose the spiritual journey soon learn that clarity comes after surrender. Imagine a foggy morning drive. You can't speed up to make the fog go away. You have to slow down and trust that the road is still there. This is what finding answers feels like when the question is still forming. It's uncomfortable, but yes. But it's also where intuition starts speaking louder than thought. That's when real transformation begins to take shape. Carl Jung's wisdom echoes through this. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And the unconscious only rises when you stop trying to control it. This is why mystical experience often feels like unraveling. You didn't plan it. You didn't expect it. But once it begins, you can't unsee it. This is the paradox. Not knowing invites your deepest truths to surface. And the truths that emerge are not neat little answers. They're living questions that shape your path, that push you towards spiritual healing and honest reflection. Have you ever had a gut feeling that something was off, but you couldn't explain why? That's the spiritual importance of not knowing in real life. It's the whisper that says, "Don't go there," before your mind catches up. It's the sudden urge to take a new path home or to call someone you haven't spoken to in years. These moments can't be justified logically, but they're clues. They're signs from your deeper self, from the part of you that sees more than you do in the moment. Ignoring them shuts the door to your own divine guidance. Honoring them opens you to your soul purpose. The mind craves certainty, but the spirit thrives in mystery. This is why deep questions don't come with multiple choice answers. They emerge slowly, like stars appearing in a night sky. First one, then two, then a map of constellations begins to form. This is not something you figure out, it's something you feel your way into. That's why spiritual awakening often starts with disorientation. You're being pulled out of the ego's illusion of control and dropped into the soul's deeper rhythm. The path may not be linear, but it's always alive with meaning. Real life example? Think of someone going through a breakup or career loss. At first, everything feels like chaos. They ask, "Why is this happening to me?" But with time, many look back and say it was the best thing that ever happened. But because the loss forced them into the unknown. It cracked open a new question. And that question led to a more aligned life. This is soul search in motion, not a step-by-step plan, but a sacred unraveling. And in this unraveling, something beautiful is quietly assembling underneath. So here's what most people miss. Not knowing isn't a gap in your growth, it's the engine of your evolution. When you stop demanding clarity and start embracing confusion, you shift into conscious living. You become a seeker, not just a solver. That shift is where awakening signs show up. Subtle changes in perception, moments of stillness, flashes of insight that feel like home. And just when you've learned to stay present in that fog, the listening begins. But to truly listen, we first need to go deeper into the silence where the question hasn't yet been born. There's a kind of silence that most people avoid, not the absence of noise, but the absence de proposito claro. It's the space where no question has formed, but something is still stirring. In this silence, the ego panics. It wants a to-do list, a plan, something to grip. But the soul? The soul leans in. It listens. It waits. This is the most underrated part of the spiritual journey, learning to listen when there's nothing yet to hear. It's not passive. It's a choice. And it's in this stillness that divine guidance often begins to speak in a new language: sensation, emotion, subtle energy. Everyday life gives us countless opportunities to practice this. Ever taken a walk and felt a sudden wave of calm or sadness for no apparent reason? That's soul-level communication. Or maybe you're in the middle of a conversation and someone says something seemingly unrelated that hits you like lightning. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. And it only registers when you're attuned to the undercurrents beneath the surface of life. We're so used to looking for answers in headlines, courses, or motivational reels, but the most important signals often arrive in whispers. Not in volume, but in vibration. There's a kind of silence that most people avoid, not the absence of noise, but the absence de proposito claro. It's the space where no question has formed, but something is still stirring. In this silence, the ego panics. It wants a to-do list, a plan, something to grip. But the soul? The soul leans in. It listens. It waits. This is the most underrated part of the spiritual journey, learning to listen when there's nothing yet to hear. It's not passive. It's a choice. And it's in this stillness that divine guidance often begins to speak in a new language: sensation, emotion, subtle energy. Everyday life gives us countless opportunities to practice this. Ever taken a walk and felt a sudden wave of calm or sadness for no apparent reason? That's soul-level communication. Or maybe you're in the middle of a conversation and someone says something seemingly unrelated that hits you like lightning. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. And it only registers when you're attuned to the undercurrents beneath the surface of life. We're so used to looking for answers in headlines, courses, or motivational reels, but the most important signals often arrive in whispers. Not in volume, but in vibration. Listening at this level requires space. And not just outer space, but inner spaciousness. Most people think they need to learn more to evolve, but often they just need to subtract. Less input, less stimulation, less noise. The more you empty your mind, the more the hidden signals start to rise. This is why practices like meditation, slow journaling, or mindful solitude aren't luxuries, they're necessities. They're not about feeling zen all the time. They're about tuning your awareness to the subtle frequency where your intuition lives. The place where your higher self drops breadcrumbs in silence. You may notice dreams becoming more vivid, random thoughts connecting like puzzle pieces, or old memories resurfacing without warning. These are not accidents. They are signs that the inner question is beginning to take form. You just don't have the words for it yet. This is exactly what Carl Jung meant when he said the unconscious rises through symbols. If you're serious about awakening signs, learn to pay attention to what doesn't seem important. A smell that triggers a memory. A song that makes you cry. A place you feel drawn to without reason. Your soul speaks in strange poetry. Read it slowly. Let's ground this in something practical. Picture someone stuck in life, not knowing why they feel unfulfilled. They try changing jobs, moving cities, trying new hobbies. But nothing clicks. Then one day they just sit. No distractions. Just stillness. And in that stillness, a thought rises, not from effort, but from resonance. I've been living someone else's life. That's the question beginning to form. It wasn't found in a book, it emerged in silence. That moment isn't just insight. It's entry. It's the beginning of conscious living, sparked not by doing, but by listening deeply. In our hyper-connected world, this kind of listening feels radical. But it's not a rejection of life, it's a return to it. You're not withdrawing from the world. You're retuning yourself to it. Listening in this way helps you detect patterns others miss. You notice when your energy contracts around certain people or expands in specific places. You see how your body reacts before your brain does. And in this dance of awareness, your inner wisdom starts to lead. You're not just hearing, you're feeling your way towards something true. Something quietly transformative. And here's the key, this kind of listening doesn't give you clarity overnight. It gives you presence. And from presence, the silent question begins to stretch and take shape, not as a sentence, but as a stirring, a movement, a shift. You might not yet know what you're searching for, but you'll start to know where to look. And that's when things get interesting. Because now, you're not forcing the question, you're following it. And what happens next often begins in places no one thinks to look. Like a dream, a symbol, or an impulse that leads to a hidden door. The soul is always speaking. It just doesn't speak in plain English. It speaks in metaphors, in feelings, in images that flash through your mind when you're half awake. And if you're paying attention, you'll realize that these are not random. They are invitations. Spiritual awakening doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives in a quiet dream, or a song lyric that won't leave your head, or a bird landing on your window just as a thought crosses your mind. These are the breadcrumbs. Not loud enough to demand attention, but persistent enough to stir curiosity. Follow them. Have you ever had a dream so vivid it haunted you for days? Or noticed the same number, 1111, 333, 777, showing up everywhere you look? These patterns aren't glitches in your perception. They're part of the language your higher self uses to guide you. Even Carl Jung dedicated a huge part of his work to exploring dreams as portals to unconscious truths. He didn't treat dreams like random stories. He treated them as blueprints of the soul. This is how deep questions begin to surface, through repetition, reflection, and reverence for the things that logic can't explain. Think of intuition like a compass hidden in your chest. You don't always know where it's pointing, but you feel the pull. Sometimes it's subtle, an inner resistance to something that should be right. Other times, it's a bold push towards something you don't understand yet. Have you ever felt that pull? That moment where you're about to text someone and you pause because something inside says, wait? That's intuition. And when you start honoring those microsignals, you unlock a deeper connection to your own spiritual journey. You begin to move with the current instead of fighting it. Let's bring this into the real world. Say you're scrolling through your feed and a phrase in a caption hits you like a wave. Or you're talking to a stranger and they say something that gives you chills. These moments are small, but sacred. They are messages from your inner wisdom, disguised as coincidence. If something makes your chest tighten or your heart beat faster, it's a sign. You're not supposed to rationalize it right away. You're supposed to feel your way through it. Like walking through a forest at dusk with no flashlight, trusting each step even if the path isn't visible. The more you trust these symbols, the more fluent you become in your soul's language. This fluency allows you to interpret not just dreams, but daily life. A shadow falling across your desk at the exact moment you ask a question. A memory from childhood resurfacing out of nowhere. Even a song you haven't heard in years that plays when you're doubting your next move. These are not background noise. They are synchronistic cues. They offer insight, comfort, or direction, but only if you're brave enough to follow where they lead. Most people ignore them. But you're not most people. You might find that once you begin following these intuitive clues, your life becomes strangely poetic. Events align. People show up. Obstacles fall away. Not because you forced a solution, but because you listened deeply. And that's what separates passive seekers from conscious participants. When you respect the signs, you become co-creator with the universe. This is the magic behind soul purpose. You don't stumble into it. You're led there. Not by maps or mantras, but by 1,000 tiny tugs from the unseen world. And that world? It's closer than you think. So next time you're unsure of your next step, don't panic. Ask instead, what image, memory, or sensation has been repeating itself lately? What's been showing up again and again, just quiet enough for you to ignore? That's not random. That's a message. And when you start taking those clues seriously, even playfully, you're stepping into a new level of spiritual healing. A state of alignment where the question isn't answered all at once, but rather revealed piece by piece. And sometimes, when you least expect it, the answer finds you, not as a sentence, but as a full-body recognition. The irony of every spiritual journey is that the answer you've been seeking doesn't come through effort, it comes through readiness. It appears not when you chase it, but when you've been shaped enough to hold it. And that shaping? It comes from living inside the question. Every moment of doubt, every restless night, every whisper of intuition you didn't fully understand, it all prepares you for that one day when, without warning, the answer arrives. Not as a thought, but as recognition. A stillness in your chest. A knowing that says, this is it. And the strangest part? It feels like you've known it all along. Think about it like falling in love. You can't schedule it. You don't know the day, the hour, or the reason. But when it happens, something inside you just clicks. You feel more you than ever, and yet you've changed completely. That's what it feels like when the true answer appears. Not a puzzle solved, but a soul remembered. And once it arrives, everything you experienced before makes sense. All the delays, the detours, even the suffering, they were necessary. Because they softened you. They broke the ego just enough for the truth to slide in quietly and stay. There's a man I once met, quiet, mid-40s, lived a very normal life. One day, while gardening, he looked up and felt a presence. Not a ghost. Not a vision. Just presence. And in that moment, he said he remembered who he was. Not his job. Not his story. But his soul. He wept for 2 hours and couldn't explain why. No book prepared him. No ritual summoned it. It just found him. That's what happens when you've been doing the inner work quietly, listening, watching, surrendering. The answers saw that he was finally ready and knocked. You see, the soul doesn't rush. It waits. And once it sees that you're no longer resisting, no longer demanding, no longer filling the silence with panic, that's when the truth enters. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. And in that presence, your ego death becomes the soil where clarity blooms. It doesn't come as a blast, it comes as a shift. Suddenly things feel lighter. Not because life is easier, but because your perception has changed. That's when conscious living begins, not by controlling the outer world, but by being in full communion with your inner world. But here's what most people don't expect. The answer doesn't solve your life. It deepens it. It gives you better questions. It gives you richer awareness. It shows you that the destination was never the goal. The becoming was. And the journey you took to reach this moment made you more humble, more awake, more alive. That's why people who've had mystical experiences often find it hard to explain. It's not that the experience is complicated, it's that words are too small to hold it. You don't explain the truth. You live it. You radiate it. At this point, you stop obsessing over fixing things. You're no longer chasing. You're flowing. Yes, life will still throw curveballs. But now you meet them with clarity. You meet them with strength that isn't hard, it's grounded. Because you've been to the edge of yourself and waited long enough to hear the whisper. That's the power of soul search. It doesn't promise ease. It promises depth. And when the answer finds you, it rewrites how you relate to everything. Love, fear, purpose, time, even death. It roots you in something no one can take away. So here's the final reflection. If you're in the unknown right now, don't rush to escape it. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are being emptied so that truth can have space to land. And when it does, it won't shout. It will whisper. And when you hear it, you'll realize the real treasure was never the answer. It was the version of you that emerged while waiting for it. Now ask yourself, Are you still chasing? Or are you finally ready to receive? Because the moment you stop demanding the answer is often the moment it arrives. If you've made it this far, you're not here by accident. Something brought you. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was pain. But deep down, you already know, this journey was never just about finding an answer. It was about remembering who you are when everything else is stripped away. We live in a world obsessed with solutions, with speed, with clarity. But real transformation, the kind that shifts your soul, comes when you stop asking Google and start listening to your own silence. That's where the question lives. And that's where the answer is born. So I challenge you now, not to seek, but to sit. Not to fix, but to feel. What if the very question you've been avoiding is the one that will unlock everything? What if your breakthrough doesn't come through doing, but through being? If something stirred inside you today, if a sentence or a moment echoed like it was meant for you, don't let it pass. Save this video. Revisit it. Reflect. Because your spiritual journey is unfolding, and the next step may already be whispering your name. Stay connected. Subscribe for more insights that speak not just to the mind, but to the soul. And tell me in the comments, what question are you finally ready to live with, without needing to solve it right away? That one question might just change everything.